Peter Koufopoulos is the Deputy Director for Animal-Derived Foods out of the Office of Food Safety for the Center of Food Safety and Applied Nutrition at the FDA. And so he's here with us today to speak to prevention strategies and expanding a prevention strategy approach. So thank you, Peter, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. First, I want to thank the organizers for the invitation to come speak with you all today. I apologize I wasn't able to travel to be with you. As you just heard, I'll be touching on how we are implementing prevention strategies as a newer approach within FDA. As mentioned, I'm Peter Koufopoulos, Deputy Director in the Office of Food Safety. A little about me as far as background. I started with a state health department for about 8 years out of college. I moved over to the FDA, was 9 years within our field offices, and for the last 13 years, I have been at headquarters doing policy work. So a little about the agency, as you know, we ensure safety, efficacy, and wholesomeness of products, ranging from medical devices, drugs, biologics, tobacco items, and obviously food. And this is minus the primary meats that are handled by USDA, such as beef, pork, and chicken. I, within our what we call CFSAN, our Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, and this is our food safety policy headquarters, located in Maryland, outside Washington, D.C. Here we look at nutritional guidelines, truthful labeling, cosmetic safety, and of course, food safety. We also house the outbreak response folks and our research laboratories. So for me, I'm one of two deputies in our Office of Food Safety. This is where we set our food safety policy for the agency. So it is both domestic and international, if you think of it that way. So those folks that import foods into the US still have to comply with our requirements. Here we generate guidance, promulgate regulation, and help create training and recommend field inspection and sampling assignments. On this chart here, so I oversee the divisions of dairy, egg, and meat, our division of seafood safety, one of our research facilities, which is a seafood science technology down in our Gulf Coast laboratory in the Gulf of Mexico, and provide support to our retail food protection staff. Within CFSAN, one of our closest working sister offices, if you will, is CORE, our Coordinated Outbreak Response and Evaluation Group. This group tracks outbreak signals, partners with states and CDC to track ill persons reported through the healthcare system, and works diligently to identify likely suspect food to assist with removing that food from the market. You can see here they have a long list of outbreaks that they have followed up with and coordinated, monitored, and reported out on since their inception back in 2011. So for us, prevention strategies, so as part of the agency's new direction under the new era of smarter food safety, the way we looked at outbreaks has changed. We looked for ways to be more proactive and less reactive. That meant to find ways to mitigate outbreaks before they started, find a way to lessen illnesses across all food commodities. The strategies are designed to be finite and specific efforts designed to limit future outbreaks. The strategies may identify the need for new or updated guidance, new laws, new partnerships with groups to share data, new training, and identify research gaps. And throughout the process, we built in ways to meet with industry or other stakeholders to share ideas. We can't do this and be successful without input from all. It doesn't help us to implement something that can't, or create something that can't be implemented in the field. So we want to be able to hear from stakeholders on what some of their challenges are. Here's what I want to walk through. It's the process flow on how we get to a prevention strategy. So as you can see on the left, you've got your suspect food commodity. You're going to get signals, those being illness reports that are coming in through the healthcare system. And as those reports come in, we're now painting a picture. What does it look like? Are there a lot of illnesses being reported? Is it a multi-state? Is it something that we would then classify as an outbreak? So as we're trying to pull this information together, we're trying to figure out, do we have a consistent suspect vehicle, if you will, a consistent food commodity? And so that takes us into the investigation portion, in which we're trying to understand all the information available. And we're going to evaluate through a root cause investigation. So during the illness outbreak that's occurring, our field investigators are trying to obtain as much information as possible. It's that information that will be captured in real time that will be transferred to another group that's going to better assess what is happening, analyze it, for instance, and trying to figure out what are the challenges and what are some possible prevention, we call levers of prevention, that we might pull. So that all leads us into, okay, we have enough here, we know enough, and now we can talk about an actual formal prevention strategy. In some cases, we don't have enough information. We don't have that suspect information, and we're not sure. So then it falls to what we call our divisional activities, our normal program office actions, such as maybe it's a product that is implicated that's coming in, that's being imported. And so we implement something called an import alert. So we're monitoring more as the product comes to our borders, and we are collecting samples or doing more assessments. Or maybe it's a matter of us being able to conduct more sampling or increased inspections for domestic products. So there are several things that we can do that's more localized before go to a prevention strategy. If we go to a prevention strategy, we may be coordinating to identify research needs. Are there publications that we want to generate to put out through the scientific community? We always want to stay engaged with the stakeholders, find out their influences, but also talk to them about training. We do find occasionally that, well, quite frequently actually, that industry already have a handle on a lot of things that are happening. And they know that they are trying to implement best practices, and they look to improve their own on-site training or training across the board if it's the company that has locations across many states or even global these days. So we try to partner with them to make sure that we have a way of, we'll take action, but also we want the industry to take ownership as well. We want them to come forward with some solutions and then partner together on how we can work consistently to get us to the end goal. As I mentioned, some other activities, bigger ones, may be an enhanced sample assignments. So we may do more enhanced swabbing, looking for pathogens that are rooted within a facility, something beyond just product sampling. Training can be for the industry, but can also be for us. We want to be able to ensure that our inspectors are getting the proper training to help when they're dealing with the regulated industry. There may be more specific rulemaking, extensive guidance that we need to do, et cetera. But all of this is for naught if we don't know the problem we're trying to solve. So we have to look more, and what we're going to do now is look more as far as the investigation aspect. So when we start diving into, we'll go into root cause investigations. So when there's an outbreak, we try to conduct the investigation and tie the incident back to the origin. What was the breakdown that caused the issue? For a manufacturer, was it a system failure, something localized to a firm, or was it more broad, something tied to a new innovative process, type of new equipment, something that's more widespread throughout the industry that may have changed? Or is it an implicated type of produce? What were the mitigating factors? Was there contamination in the air, soil, water? How much additional testing do we need to find out those issues? And all of this is happening usually in real time while there's an outbreak happening. So an investigator can be on the farm, reviewing information that's readily available, looking back at ongoing records within that farm or facility, and trying to figure out where the breakdown may have occurred. So now that we have that information, now we're trying to do the analysis. Once we have the data in hand, now we move into that phase. For farms, do we see consistent contamination in the water? If there was, is it seasonal or intermittent? Is there some trend that we're starting to find? This will help better frame the problem that we're trying to solve, and help us figure out where to put resources as we're trying to tackle this effort. So, as you can imagine, through any of these things, there are challenges. So, basic challenges when performing either an investigation or the subsequent analysis: sampling is usually limited by available resources, and any sampling is likely giving a brief snapshot in time and not providing a robust statistical backing to identify trends. We may also be dealing with short shelf life commodities, such as produce. And these commodities move so quickly through commerce that we may actually get mixed signals and not be sure where to look. So another challenge is that the contamination insults may no longer be present after the fact, making it harder to determine what has happened. So timing is everything when we try to figure out where we are, where we're going, and how fast we can pull information together. So here's a different diagram, but similar to the steps that you saw earlier. So you have the handoff from core when there's an illness investigation, and they wrap up and they'll hand it off to our folks here in our Office of Food Safety. And so we're trying to figure out if we have sufficient attribution or understand the likely causal effect of the issue. Is the issue ongoing? Are there other investigations going on? So we're grabbing that information and then trying to undo some kind of post-outbreak evaluation. And this is where we're engaging industry. So in box 4 there, if you will, we're reaching out to them to find out, have they conducted more of an RCI, an investigation on their part? Have they done their own analysis? A lot of industry folks do their own analysis as they're trying to figure out their own problems. And so it's this information, as we engage back and forth, that helps us determine, should we do more analysis, gather more data as we try to figure out the next steps. So we're looking at the outbreak reports, any historical analysis that may have happened, and that's going to move further into deciding, do we have enough to do a formal prevention strategy? Or are there no actions to really be taken, and it's something that we're just going to be in a monitoring phase? So we want to get to a point where we have some finite targeted tasks in order to create that strategy. And that's when we pick up in the last box there in box 8 and start moving through the formal strategy process. So circling back to what you saw earlier, so these need to be very specific with specific deliverables as we work through this process. Here's where we assign a project manager to help monitor the various activities. And we also identify a business lead, someone who's going to drive the project forward and help make decisions. They will also be in charge of identifying and bringing in any needed subject matter experts from across the various offices. So whether it be our Office of Compliance, labeling, food additive safety, or the research laboratories. As part of the process, to help with roles, responsibilities, and expectations as we move through this, we create a charter which outlines the components of these efforts and allows for agreement on a unified path forward, and offers leadership the ability to concur, knowing that we're assigning resources and we need the money and the people in order to complete the tasks. So it's a great way to be able to ensure that we have parity across the different offices, that we're not putting too much burden on one group or another, and helps lay out the resources necessary in order to be successful in the project. As part of the effort, when we stand up a prevention strategy and it has a project manager, we have that team. Well, as part of those discussions by this team, the group is going to review all the inspection reports, the outcome from the root cause analysis, any data trends, look at historical information on past outbreaks and see if we learned anything additional from there. Some of this may be supplemental information, which furthers our knowledge and helps drive us further down the road to figure out next steps. We're going to be trying to figure out if there are, in the case of produce, what environmental conditions may have played a role in any of the contamination. And we want to identify any data gaps. We have research laboratory capability. So do we need to find out new methodologies, new ways of sampling? Do we want to look at things from a seasonal perspective, et cetera? So this is all in an attempt to mitigate future incidents. One example that I worked on closely is powdered infant formula. So an example of one of our current strategies that's on our website, we have identified the need to better understand Coronabacter sakazaki, how it's transmitted, how it survives, and what additional research is needed. We know that we need better oversight on production, both in best practices by the firms themselves through enhanced training of employees, but also in our own investigators. Industry has offered to partner with us in conducting on-site tutorials of the latest technologies with our staff. This is helping us stay current in the latest processing techniques. We also discussed improved communication to consumers, reinforcing the need to follow the preparation instructions precisely and not skipping steps because it's 2 a.m. and we're half asleep and the baby's crying. It's important to follow those instructions because when we were talking with industry, they felt adamantly that those instructions were acting as almost like a kill step, that they had on there that you had to boil the water for so many minutes and use that when applying to powdered infant formula. And so that way it provided a certain level of safety. And we want to make sure that we're providing that insight and guidance to new parents so they understand the risks associated with powdered infant formula. Through these current efforts, we're focusing on our regulatory approach and the firm's ability to monitor its own process. Both sides are asking if additional controls should be put into place, such as increased on-site sampling. When it comes to education, how are we going to get the word out to new parents of the risk of even at-home cross-contamination of Coronabacter and the need to properly prepare formula in their own kitchen? We're looking to launch new research as the team identifies new data gaps. On our website, you'll see that we have these strategies in process, and we have summaries of our efforts, which you may review. So we have right now the queso fresco cheese. We have mushrooms, imported enoki and wood ear. We have bulb onions, and I just touched on the powdered infant formula. And we have another handful or so that are currently in process in various stages here within our office to try to figure out how we want to tackle certain projects. As part of this, how do you measure success? And our goal obviously is to lessen the frequency of illnesses in the population, but that will be very hard to track. That seems to be more of a long-term trend, long-term trend analysis. So what we're going to be looking for from our purposes is our level of external engagement. How are we being successful with the industry and with stakeholders to share information, to partner, and how are we creating new rules or guidances, publishing any training, etc. So those are a lot of the things that we're trying to do as a overview or snapshot, if you will, on prevention strategies within our Office of Food Safety. So I will stop there, but just wanted to give you that insight of some of the new activities that we are doing.
I'll remind you, whenever you have a regulator willing to speak to you, it's a great opportunity to find some things out. Peter, I have a question for you. I mean, so you described sort of going on offense. I was wondering if this included potentially doing market surveillance. We heard from the CFIA this morning who described increased market or in the market surveillance as something we can look forward to in terms of provenance of products. Is that a component of FDA strategy in this context?
I would say yes, in that we perform what we call the total diet study. So that is something that is ongoing. It's been ongoing for decades, as I recall. And it is the process in which we are pulling samples across commodities at the retail level, hundreds of samples on an annual basis. And so that gives us some precursor, if you will, if we start seeing anything that's in the marketplace. So those are routine monitoring, one strategy of routine monitoring that's occurring. Obviously, that partners with our ongoing engagement with industry groups who also conduct their own sampling, and we share information back and forth. But that is our first effort, I guess, as far as collecting additional samples at retail to see if there's something happening. But we are also looking for signals across the board. You know, we monitor for what's being reported through the healthcare system. There are multiple ways in which the FDA or CDC, which another agency we partner with, you all know, and they have routine information that's obtained through their surveillance systems. And so we have routine meetings. We have monthly standing meetings to share all of this information. So that way we can identify if there's something new coming across. In our office, the core, Coordinate Outbreak Response, they are also watching. They'll watch news reports, and there's all kinds of ways in which things are coming in, also from foreign countries. So as you know, there's the RAF system in the EU. We have close contact with members of CFIA. So if there are new emerging outbreaks or things that we're seeing, we jump on that as quickly as possible because we know, being a global marketplace and knowing that we have container ships and other transport of food commodities, they go up and down the coastline. So what is here may likely show up at another location, country, etc. So we want to stay timely with sharing information.
Terrific, thank you. We've got a question from the audience.
Hi, thank you for that. I was just wondering if you could possibly give any insight into how FDA is dealing with the rise of homemade food sales in the US. I was just part of a panel talking about it and how we're doing it in Canada. Just wondering if you can share any insights. I'm not sure if you're aware of apps like Chef, SHEF. They have 40,000 home chefs across US. Any insight you can share into that?
I will share a little bit.
All right.
So I know we have updated our retail food code in the last year to provide a little bit more information. We are diligently looking at how to monitor foods that are being transported, if you will. You know, the HelloFresh and different companies like that are sending box foods. How do they ensure the safety of those items? And so a lot of those regulated, or to be regulated, I guess, entities, a lot of times fall to the state and local level. So it is a definite challenge. And within the different groups, we are trying to partner to find the best way to get information to them. But it's going to be a hard road, I think, to try to get that under control. You know, back decades ago when a lot of these guidances and our current rules were created, none of this was even imagined. So we have to figure out how to reimagine our approaches. So it'll be an ongoing effort.
Peter, I've got a question for you. Pardon me. In relation to what we spoke about today, does it equally apply to the SFVP program? So for foreign suppliers that are sort of qualified to send or import products into the United States? Do we see that as...
I'm just trying to understand the question. So foreign suppliers have to follow our same requirements. So, I mean, anything would still apply. It actually, for our purposes, it may actually be a little bit easier when we're dealing with foreign entities, because if we find foreign products, as you may